This corridor has not only a space that will have businesses on it and connections to downtown, but also a flat, safe space away from traffic to be on, right? And you cannot get another corridor like this. This is a once in multiple century opportunity.
Hi, Karl here, principal broker at Kline May Realty. Welcome back to our second podcast ever. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about transportation issues, specifically pedestrian and bicycle transportation issues, how that interacts with motorized transportation, and then what all of that has to do with real estate. We've got with us today Karl Lawrence, who's the executive director of the Shenandoah Valley Bicycle Coalition. The Bike Coalition has evolved over the last 20 or so years, I guess, into a real force for biking and walkability type advocacy, especially in the city of Harrisonburg, in addition to helping create lots and lots of wonderful mountain bike trails. So we're very excited to have Karl here. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Get us started initially just by explaining a little bit about your role and what the coalition's goals are in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So the coalition occupies a really interesting space, coming from a history of being bike club related and moving into a broader community organization. So going from being just a bike club to focusing on bike walk issues, transportation, and having trails as kind of a centering piece. And those trails could be everything from natural service trails to sidewalks and greenways and things like that. But our goal is to make walking and biking and active transportation and outdoor recreation more accessible, specifically through trails. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and a lot of things that play a role in whether or not someone can wake up and easily walk or bike as part of their daily life.
Absolutely. And I would like to touch on a lot of those different issues. One of the biggest things you all have going on that I think really will show incredibly good evidence that connectivity brings economic development is the Rail Trail project that's going on in the Shenandoah Valley. Talk to us a little bit about that and some of the reasons why you think that's important for those of us living here.
I'm excited to start with that project because I often tell people that if I had to pick one project that the coalition was working on and had to drop everything else, it would be the Shenandoah Rail Trail, right? And so this nearly 50-mile corridor between Broadway and Front Royal is just an unparalleled opportunity because you have this rail corridor which goes through these 9 towns and 3 counties. It goes, in most cases, right next to or along Main Street almost. And so this ability to have this long-distance trail that is both recreation and transportation and creates a space for economic development. And that's, of course, small businesses along the corridor, but also increasing quality of life, right? Making our communities stickier so people want to stay here, people want to move here, and businesses want to come here. And I think that's the big picture impact of this work and of trails, and nothing sums that up better than the potential of this project, the Shenandoah Rail Trail.
Right, I agree. And I think it's very telling that these towns, a lot of them, were very negatively impacted by the development of 81 and pulled a lot of traffic and a lot of economic development potential away from those towns. And now a project like this, like you said, brings it right back to Main Street.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it because for almost every one of these towns, Route 11, which was the main corridor through the valley, is Main Street, right? Yeah. And so 81 pulled that traffic away, and not that Route 11 could handle the traffic that's on 81 right now, but we think about this corridor has not only a space that will have businesses on it and connections to downtown, but also a flat, safe space away from traffic to be on, right? And in the valley, it's fairly hilly, so when you talk about active transportation or recreation, walking, running, biking, rolling, it's pretty hard on a lot of our rural roads, right? You're sharing it with cars or they're very hilly. So this corridor being flat and graded, like you cannot get another corridor like this. This is a once in multiple century opportunity. We'll never create another corridor like this for the valley, particularly one that goes through the heart of these communities.
I agree. I think it's got great potential. Very, very exciting. So let's talk about another kind of accessibility and your Bikes for Neighbors program and some of the groups of folks who may not have as easy of a time as others getting access to bikes, whether that be for recreation or for getting to work.
So our Bikes for Neighbors program is an exciting piece of our work, and it's more of a direct impact piece, right? So in other spaces where we might be building trails or doing advocacy for trails and connections, this is where we're actually helping people one-on-one. And so for us, the bike is really just a tool. You know, it's not about the bike necessarily, but we do think the bike has some special magic to it. Like it's fun, it's joyful, it has this childlike resonance for a lot of people. But there's a bunch of folks who bike because they have no other option. And so this program connects those people who could use a bike for transportation with a really well refurbished used bicycle that they can take about for their daily trips. And I think one of the unique pieces of the program is we stand by the statement that we are connecting people with the highest quality bike of any program like this in the country. So the amount of time and investment in each bike is very high. Everything from changing out, I won't get into the details, but changing out different parts and things on them so they will last outside of the elements in particular. Making sure people have a choice of the bike, making sure it fits really well so that it actually works for their daily transportation. And the person we have working on that is an amazing proponent of this, and he's someone who rides his bike as part of his daily life. So not only does he get them set up with the right bike, he will take them out on rides, show them how to get places safely and easily. So it's a really exciting chapter for the coalition where we're making this direct one-on-one impact and yet informing our advocacy work of what people need in the community to make their routes, their commutes, their trips safer.
Right. Yeah, it's a great program. So how does that work? If I'm a person who is in need of transportation and I see this podcast, how do I get hooked up with that?
We work on a referral basis, so pretty much any direct service agency that someone might be working with could refer someone. And of course, we are open to folks reaching out to us independently, but the first thing we ask is if there's someone that you could go through. That could be as simple as the city schools or the county schools. That could be any other direct service agency in the community. It could even be businesses in some cases. We do ask for a $100 commitment towards the bike. That is flexible, but we can do it over a period of time. Sometimes we get other folks to help sponsor that. And what that does is it creates some buy-in for the bicycle itself. And then we also offer, if people don't need the bike anymore, we buy it right back from them.
Fantastic. You mentioned safety a couple times. And I know the coalition was very involved in the Mason Street temporary redesign and has been very influential in bike lanes and sharrows and those kinds of things. How do you think we're doing? And what would you like to see happen still?
Safety is a really interesting word in, I think, active transportation and bike walk advocacy. Because on one hand, we would all love to see a completely separated infrastructure where we're all riding bikes separate from cars, but that's not realistic. And so we're always walking a line between helping people see that biking is not necessarily dangerous, it is attainable, particularly in certain parts of our community, but that we do have work to do. In Harrisonburg, there's been a lot of work that has already happened for changing our infrastructure. We think about some of our greenway networks, the Friendly City Trail, the North End Greenway, the Bluestone Trail. The missing piece is how we connect those on existing streets. And so a really exciting project will be the Liberty Street cycle track through downtown, which will physically separate a whole lane of traffic.
Okay.
And that will be, you can bike on that going either direction on Liberty Street and you'll be separated from cars and be at about a mile long. So there's a lot in the pipeline. There's always a lot to do. But what I tell people is there's a lot of safe, slow, relatively quiet streets that you can use now, even if it doesn't have infrastructure on it. So I think you have to be willing to piece that together. And we are big proponents for fighting really hard for the areas that are those key connections. Liberty Street being one, because you got to get through downtown. Bridges being another. You got to have a way to get over a bridge. The new bridge that's going in on 33 across 81, it's going to have a shared use path in the median. And so that's going to be a really nice way to get people safely across the interstate. And if you don't get that when the bridge is built, it might be 100+ years before someone builds a new bridge and puts that in.
How about just a little east of town, like where the hospital is? In the county's long-term plans, there are desires for a lot of bikeability, walkability to some of those neighborhoods just east of town. Have you had conversations with the hospital about using their land for some of that connection?
Yeah, so Rockingham County has been pretty forward-thinking in that whole space over there by the hospital, and that's between US 33 and Port Republic Road. That is their urban development area, so they're trying to focus development there. And we think that's great. They want a higher level of density there than they get in the rest of the county. And with that would come more pedestrian, bike-focused amenities like those trails, sidewalks. And so the hospital has a role to play. All the developments that come in have a role to play, but the best part is the county already has a plan laid out for a lot of these shared use paths along roads like Stone Spring and Boyers. And so as developments come in, the developers will be responsible for building those sections of that. And eventually maybe the county will have to come in and complete those segments, but at least we have a plan and a path forward for not only the infrastructure, but for buildings that hopefully come up to the edge of the street more and create a better space, a more human-scaled space to walk around, bike around, instead of completely car-centric. There'll still be cars, but it's about how we fit them into the landscape.
Right. It's interesting, on some of those roads, for example, Boyers Road, there are a couple new townhome developments where the developer has put in a path but it's not quite connected to anything yet, but you can see the puzzle pieces starting to go together.
Yeah, that's one of the frustrating things I think for advocates in bike walk spaces is like, why is the bike lane end? Why is the sidewalk end? And the reality is the construction of those pieces of infrastructure can be really expensive. And so we do have to be patient. Transportation is a long game. Mm-hmm. The roads and things that are being built now were planned often 10 to 15 to 20 years ago, and in many cases funded 10 years ago. So a lot of the work that the coalition and other groups in this space do is very long term, and it's hard to see that impact immediately. We think it's really important to have that voice there while the planning is going on and while we're putting these things in place. Otherwise, they don't get wrapped into the design.
How about a little bit further east now? One of my favorite spots in the whole world is the western slope of Massanutten, and I've spent a lot of time there over the last 35 years or so. Talk a little bit about the long-term plan for that and how exciting and far-reaching that could be.
Yeah, and I think this is a great segue into like some of the other work the coalition does, which is this natural surface trails, connecting people to nature, connecting people to public lands. In this case, it's private land, but it's operated in kind of a public good for now, which is really exciting. So we have a really unique opportunity with the Western Slope. The Western Slope of Massanutten is owned by Massanutten Resort, but it is less than 15 minutes from downtown Harrisonburg, where we are right now. It's one of the reasons I love the area. Yeah. It's our most popular trail system in the area. It's probably the single biggest reason why there's more people mountain biking and trail running now than there were 10 years ago. And so we have a really unique partnership with the resort who owns the property. We get to run a system where people can purchase a pass. We take that money in, it goes back to the system. And through a combination of volunteers and professional trail builders, we've been building out a system of trails there. But the really exciting thing is that this past spring, we launched what is hopefully at least a 10-year vision for doubling the trail capacity out there. So we have a little less than 30 miles of trail out there now. About half of that was built by us. Half of that's probably legacy trail. And we're poised to add another 15 to 20 miles and go further south and wrap around the peak of Massanutten in the coming years.
Yeah, very exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Expanding trailheads is certainly in the plan.
Right.
Rockingham Park connection, maybe somewhere over by Spotswood High School, hopefully coming back around in the resort so you have more opportunities to plug in there, connecting the system to the bike park. But it's been all possible because of a lot of dedicated volunteers over the years. So some phenomenal people who've been committing many, many years of their life out there and then leveraging community resources to bring in these professional trail builders. So those two things together are how that happens. And it's just a really strong story about what can happen with community partnerships and even with the corporate partnership. And Massanutten has played a huge role in that and has a bigger role to play in the future and is excited.
Right. Where else besides Massanutten are you creating some new trails?
So we've done a lot in the National Forest west of Harrisonburg, right along the Tillman Road corridor, which splits Augusta and Rockingham County. We've invested about $1 million in federal grants in natural surface trails in the forest over the past decade. Our current projects are up outside of Woodstock, Seven Bends State Park. We're going to start construction on natural surface trail there in November to connect the park up to the ridgetop in the forest. We have a project going in Waynesboro to build out trails at Sunset Park, which is their newest park on an old landfill. And we're really excited to launch a long-term planning vision for our national forest trails. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be launching with a survey, doing focus groups, and then trying to map out what the future of the national forest trails west of Harrisonburg could look like. Because we have such a huge amount of public land in the valley, and it's often kind of an afterthought, and a lot of people forget about it. So we really think there's a lot of trail-focused things we could do to make public land more accessible, get more people out there, and make it a better resource for the community. And ultimately, it's also an economic driver.
So we've got improved safety on paved roads, we've got what could be a life-changing rail trail project, and we've got dirt trails. All great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today, Kyle. That was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. And thank all of you for watching. Please join us next time. That'll be our episode number 3. My guest will be Lindsay Douglas, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters in Harrisonburg and Rockingham County. Thanks a bunch. We'll see you next time.